I'm Prashant. This series is created to welcome you into the world of some really amazing, inspiring women. Watch exclusively with me on this show, The Pretty Pep Talk with Prashant. Hello, welcome to the series, The Pretty Pep Talk with Prashant. And my today's guest is a very, very graceful and beautiful lady. I have been, the first time when I met her, I was so impressed with her dignity. And she's a very dignified looking lady and a beautiful lady. And she's been in journalism for more than 2 decades. And if I'm not wrong, first with Femina, then with Citadel, and then Indian Express. That's a long journey with different publications. And finally, she came up with this wonderful book called Sunanda Pushkar, a very controversial and a very beautifully written book. So, Sunanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prashant, for having me.
Okay, tell me, from journalism to writing and back to writing this book, how come?
Actually, from journalism to writing books is quite a natural progression.
Is it?
Most journalists do end up writing books, and I also did think some point I will. Except I didn't quite ever imagine I would be writing on this subject.
Absolutely.
So it so happened that Sunanda Pushkar was a friend. She was my schoolmate.
Oh.
And we were together in 2 places, in Ambala and Jhansi. Our fathers were both in the army, so I knew her very well. And then, of course, there was a long gap. I mean, I kind of lost touch with her. And then she burst into limelight as Shashi Tharoor's wife.
Right.
And I kept thinking I'll reconnect with her, but it never happened. And the next thing I knew was we heard about her death.
Yes.
So when that happened, I was working with the Indian Express. And so I wrote a full-page piece on the Sunanda no one knew. Because the Sunanda that I knew, when she was in school as a schoolgirl, was a very shy, reserved, a very plain Jane kind of a person.
Right.
And then her metamorphosis to what she really became was, it was really impressive and it was astounding. So I wrote about the Sunanda no one knew and how she was in school, and I wrote all about her life. I talked to everyone. And that was it. But then about 2-3 years later, I have a friend who knows me well, and she knew her also well. So she suggested that why didn't you write on her? Because she said that article she still remembered.
Okay.
So then she put me onto an agent. I just wrote a brief and sent it. And before I knew, Pan Macmillan, they approached and they signed up. And that was just the time when I was leaving Express after a long 2-decade innings, and I had the time. Right. So I thought, okay, why not? So I got down to writing that.
Oh, very interesting. But was it difficult to get to actually writing about such a controversial episode of somebody's death happening in a very, it was a very controversial news that time?
Yeah, it was extremely difficult.
Yeah.
I never imagined it to be so difficult, or maybe I wouldn't have taken up the task.
Right.
One, because it was so controversial, there were very few people willing to talk. I mean, I had a long list of 150 people I would talk to, journalists and lawyers and doctors and friends and family. And more than half refused to speak because I think they were not comfortable speaking about her. So gathering information became so much more difficult. Then sifting through the information, because again there were so many interpretations, different versions about her as a person, about the episodes in her life.
Right.
And then also very difficult because, well, she wasn't alive. So it was, you're writing about someone who's dead, who's not there to give the other side of the story about herself. So that actually made us just more responsible and conscious when we were writing, to make sure that it was all ethical. We wanted to make sure there's nothing which, you want to say about a dead person which is not correct or in bad taste.
Right.
So the book went through a lot of drafts. It went through 3 legal readings. Oh. And it was supposed to take a year, but finally it took 2 years, mainly because of all these challenges that were involved.
So how difficult it was to write about her personal life and about what kind of person, because you said you haven't met her for long, and then post her death, and then again you need to do a lot of research on that?
Yeah, it was really difficult. I mean, there were quite a few things. One, of course, she was a very well written about woman.
Right.
So if I had to write a book about her, I had to make sure that I will put in the book things which are not known to the public.
Correct.
So that called for a lot of original research. So which meant I went to Dubai, Canada. Her 5 years in Canada were complete blank. No one knew about it. So I traveled there. And of course I traveled to places like, Kerala, Chandigarh, where all she had been and she'd stayed, or there were friends and people who knew her well. I traced her family roots from her, from her second husband, his sister. I traced her to Cochin and I went there to meet her. So there's a lot of research involved. That was one challenge. Second was that the fact that it was such a controversial subject. So which means that a lot of people didn't speak. I had a long list of people I wanted to talk to, about 100, 150, but at least half refused to speak because I guess they didn't want to be involved, they didn't want to be quoted. So again, gathering information was that much more difficult. And there were so many versions because she herself was a very, like I written in the book, she's like a kaleidoscope. Everyone who saw her saw in her something different. And similarly with the episodes of her life, there were different versions. So one really had to gather it all, sift through all the information, find out what is correct, what is not correct. And then, only things which were which had a credible source of information, or they were verified by 2 or 3 people, only that we took into the book. So other than the ethical responsibility on us that we were writing about someone who was dead and not there to defend herself, we also had to be very careful as far as the legal aspect was concerned. It was a controversial subject and the case was going on at that time.
Right.
So it went through 3 legal readings. There were a lot of lawyers who looked into it, and I remember the first one had 70 points that they wanted me to, address. Another came and they had another 30 points. So I had to sit and make sure that every single thing, and I recorded all the interviews because we didn't want people to go back on their word later on.
Right.
That would have put us in a soup.
Right.
So, and everything had to be backed by a credible source or must have already been there in the public domain. Right. So there was a lot of fact checking, and I must credit both the publishers and my book editor. The publishers were really standing by me, and my book editor who went through every word with me, and I really owe the tonality and really the kind of book it has turned out to be. I owe a lot to her, to Tista Guha Sarkar.
Oh, lovely. So you went through a lot of trouble times, it looks like, because a lot of research has gone into this. So Sunanda, tell me, are you this kind of person in your personal life also? Do you always, are you a go-getter? Like,
I don't want to go-getter, but I would say I have a lot of drive. And actually why I was well prepared to do this was because I have been a journalist for so long.
Right.
It was in a way just an extension of my work as a journalist. Because as a journalist, that's what you're supposed to do. You get a story and you have to look at both sides of the story. You can never write an article only interviewing or talking to one side of the people involved.
True.
So, and also as a journalist, I was trained to go through a huge amount of paperwork. I knew how to read FIRs or get medical reports. I knew how to tap sources, how to, segregate different work, how to verify facts. That's your main job as a journalist. And then how to structure a whole story. So I really think my training of over 20-25 years of being a journalist is what helped me put this book together.
oh, lovely.
Not so much my personal life. I'm not so organized at my personal life as I'm at work. But I think it was really, and of course, everyone at Express helped me. My editors helped me to how to navigate such a controversial subject. I had contacts with people being a journalist, so I could find other sources through them.
Right.
So I think all of that helped me a lot.
So Sunanda, what next? Are you going to write only on biographies or autobiographies or something else?
Oh, no. Not any more biographies, not for the time being.
Okay.
In fact, when I was writing the book, I said, okay, this is my first and last because it was a huge task. But no, I'm writing 2 books now. One is to do something with the film industry, so a little different.
Is it? Very interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting subject. I'm doing with the co-author of mine. She's a former colleague of mine with her, Suchitra. And the other book which I'm really, quite excited about is a translation of my great-grandfather's poetry. He was a very well-known and celebrated journalist, writer, poet in, the earlier undivided India. And he has written many books of poetry, and there's one particular book of humorous poetry with a lot of satire. And it's amazing to read and find his poems are so relevant even today. So I'm translating his work from Punjabi to English. And I'm nearly done with that one. So I'm just going to, send it to a publisher of Punjabi literature. So that's one. And the second is the one which will take maybe, I think, about a year more to finish, the book on the film industry.
Okay. So do you feel writing makes you complete, the feeling of completeness?
Oh, completely. Because I think writing is what really defines me. That's what I do and that's what I am. As far as I can remember, right from my school days, all I wanted to do was become a journalist. And I consider myself very fortunate that I could actually make a whole career in this field. I mean, I remember in the initial days, I remember when we had Magna and all.
Yeah.
So my first month, I had such a ball just going out, interviewing people and writing. That at the end of the month, I got my first salary. I was like, oh, I get paid for this too. And that's how journalism really has been for me. I don't feel I've worked a single day that I was a journalist.
Okay.
And now with this, though I'm doing other things also, I'm consulting with the digital firm. I'm the editorial director, which is great. I'm learning so much new, which I never learned all these years.
Right.
And every day I'm gaining knowledge. While that is great, I think the fact that I write books on the side is what really fulfills me also. I need to do both things together.
Okay. Why I feel like this, author or writers are basically must be introvert people. Like they're not very people kind of personality, and they're more introvert. And when they write, they can express themselves better. Is it with you also? Are you an introvert?
I think you know me. I don't think I'm an introvert.
No.
At all.
Okay.
No, only thing is writing is a solitary exercise.
Yeah.
Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, when you sit down to write, you have to choose solitude. You have to find a place where you feel inspired, you feel creative. And for me, because I was working a lot in Mumbai, I remember trying to find little spots which are near the sea, places, and I would go there and I would sit and write. So with this particular book, in fact, it wasn't also something that I could do in isolation. I couldn't shut myself up somewhere and say, okay, I'm going to write for 6 months, because it involved moving so much. I had to travel to so many places, meet so many people face to face, and also a lot of authorities. I had to go visit police stations, and other than the police, there were these hospitals, and meet doctors, meet lawyers. So it was, again, like I said, extension of being a journalist, and I had to be there on the spot. I could not afford to write this book, somewhere comfortably ensconced, because I used to always think that maybe I should have written a fiction, because you can just sit there, look at the sunset, and hope words come to you. Here it was a lot of legwork, but only thing is, when I had to write, I used to go and look for a niche or a place or some little area where I would feel inspired, I would be alone, and that part I had to do it in solitude.
Right.
But otherwise, this book called for me moving around a lot. And authors, I think every author, whether he or she is an introvert or an extrovert, has to find that place for himself or herself where they can write at peace. That part has to be done in a kind of a solitary confinement.
Right.
But the rest, I don't think it really matters so much about what kind of a person you are.
Okay, but I also think like you need to be very settled with yourself and with your life to write something. Don't you feel like that? Because you have to, if your life is in turmoil, let's say, and you are having your problems and you're trying to sort that out, and I don't think then you can sit and write about somebody or someone or some fiction also. What kind of attitude a new writer should have? First, they should prepare themselves, be calm, composed, and solve your life problems and everything, and get settled with life, and then start writing, or what is the advice?
No, actually, I don't think that's really possible. I mean, if everyone waited for their life to kind of settle down and be at a state of bliss before they write, I don't think too many books would get written.
Absolutely.
Because actually, writers are as human as everyone else, and everyone has something or the other going on with their lives all the time. Some turmoil. In fact, a lot of writers actually come from a place of turmoil. And the reason they can write so well is that this is a form of escapism for them. Right. When you write a book, you are in a different world, a world that you create. And that takes you out of your own world, which may not be exactly the kinds you want it to be, or it might be in some state of chaos or turmoil. So they actually enter a different world. Right. So that way, when people write books, they kind of forget the world they are coming from. And for me, particularly for this book, when I started, I had to be very sure that I will tackle this book as an author and not as a friend. Because she was a friend, I had to tell myself that I will write this book as a journalist, as an author, and keep the friend, behind. Because otherwise you get emotionally involved with a lot of happenings in the book. I don't think a writer will really write a book only when they're at complete equanimity, or the state of mind is absolutely blissful. Quite on the contrary, they are able to leave the chaos of them behind and enter into this world, which is just the book, the world of the book, and they find their peace and their creativity and their inspiration from that world.
So, do you believe, Sunanda, like the best of the creative art happens or comes out of a creative person is when they go through certain kind of pain and agony and go through an experience? Then only the best of the work comes out. Do you feel like that?
No, I don't think you have to have a very traumatic life to really be a writer, but yes, you have to experience life. with all this, its ups and downs. Because unless you do that, you will not understand life, and unless you understand life, your writing won't have that kind of depth.
Right.
It won't have those layers, the right context. That polish only comes after you've gone through a lot of experiences in your life. So that maturity needs to be there. But of course, we have a lot of people nowadays who are in their 20s, and they are doing a fabulous job of writing books, and their books go on to be, great bestsellers.
Right.
So maybe also this generation is maturing much faster than maybe ours was.
Yes. Okay.
So that part works. But by and large, I think people who have gone through many experiences in their life, their writing tend to have a little more polish and depth and richness.
Right. So, when we look at life as life, okay, it's a very complex subject. So, do you feel you have understood life now? How do you tell a person what's life is all about?
Yeah, about understanding life, yes, I think that understanding really comes much later. In fact, I really wish I knew all the things that time that I know now. And it's, I think, one of the sad things that by the time you really start understanding life, a lot of your life has gone by and you've already made most of your critical decisions. I think that's what someone said, that the youth is wasted on the young, because when you're too immature at that time to really know what is right and wrong.
Right.
And not that one knows completely now, but yes, you do have the advantage of so many years and so many experiences. So you're probably better placed to make decisions. So I think it's one of the unfair, if I could say that, things about life is that by the time you really understand life, you've already lived such a huge part of it, You've made all your critical decisions, and only in hindsight you know how right or wrong they were. Someone did say that life is understood backwards but lived forwards.
Oh,
so yeah, it's only when you look back at what all you've gone through that you can understand life. It doesn't come with any manual, unfortunately.
Right.
And then it's up to you to kind of, from those experiences that you have had, you decide what was right, what was wrong, what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah.
And I think, really at this stage of life, I could say, one has the maturity to probably make better decisions. Not that you can do so completely. I'm sure we all will continue still making mistakes right till the end.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it does kind of make you a little more mature. It gives you a perspective more than anything else, a context to your life.
Right.
That I think only happens in the later years. It's though this generation, I would say, is far more mature, like I said earlier, because I guess the exposure is so much more. We never had the kind of exposure that they do with, whether it's travel, whether it's internet, whether it's kind of the opportunities that they have. So they do probably make decisions quicker and better. I know I consult my son in a lot of decisions that I have to make, and I find that probably he has a better head on his shoulders than I certainly did at his age.
Right. So, have you discovered the meaning of love?
Love, you mean now or earlier, or
Love,
really what
love,
it is?
as it is. Love at it. Like, see, what I believe is like every creation on this earth has a quality. Like if you look at fruits, if you look at plants, every creation has a quality of its own. And I think humans' quality is love.
Yeah.
So have you discovered love? What is love? What is love to you?
I think love is probably the greatest force you have on this earth. I think anything that moves or doesn't move, or the force behind that is love. Of course, there are many definitions, there are many interpretations.
Right.
And love is not necessarily a love between just a man and a woman or a girl and a boy. That is of course the primary definition of love. But there are others. There's love for the family, there's love for your house, there's love for your, the world around you, the people, your friends. But I think that is the most natural instinct and emotion you have. And it's really sad that earlier generations, at least, they tried to not give love enough importance, or even stem out that whole feeling of love. It was everything had to be done according to the rules of the society, and love normally does not follow those rules. Okay. So I think now the fact that people are so accepting of this emotion called love, and they all believe that is the most important thing to bind everyone together and to make all your decisions, or everything should sprout from that feeling. I think it should make the world a better place. Earlier it was, I think, a lot of practical living, and now it has come to a lot of emotional living. We don't know which probably fared better.
Right.
But for me, love is, I think, the most natural instinct in the world, and you cannot really control it. And one should not try to also.
Okay, how beautifully said. You said now today people are realizing more about love than before. That's what you're trying to say?
Yeah,
here?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
people do think that today's generation is extremely practical and down to earth and too pragmatic, and they weigh all the pros and cons, which is fine. But I don't think love has gone out of their lives. In fact, it starts very early, and that kind of carries with them through all their other practical living too. I don't think that I tend to talk to a lot of youngsters because they are my son's friends, and I think all of them believe very deeply in love.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
But don't you feel with the modern technology and everybody has become lonely now, and people have become more lonely than before, I thought.
That, yes, they probably have become more lonely. They have, and especially now with the pandemic and the lockdown, this has just reinforced the whole thing. So, yeah, it is a digital age, and I think the way of conducting this emotion, love, has changed.
Right.
Yeah, I know now they're all websites, and they are, you kind of swipe left and you swipe right to find love rather than going out and meeting people. And you have a lot of choices, which again, I'm not too sure is the best thing to happen, because the more choices you have, the more confused you are, and the less you want to settle down, and you always think there's something better at the next swipe, perhaps.
True.
Yeah, but I still feel the search for love is the same. It still continues. Maybe now there are more choices, so they kind of search a lot more for it. Like in our generation, when we settled earlier, thinking, okay, this is love, and it is, and you have to, and also that you have to make it work.
Right.
So this generation, I think they probably may not work on it so hard, because they see, okay, if this doesn't work, there's always another chance we have.
True.
So that maybe what has really changed is the commitment we had to making love work, and with this generation, that they will only try so much, and if it doesn't, they're not going to waste more time over it, but move on to maybe something else which they might find more fulfilling.
Right.
So that probably has changed. Yeah, but the basic emotion, I think basically the human being is still born with the same kind of heart. The human being is still born with the same kind of emotion. Fortunately or unfortunately, technology has not changed the way babies come out. They still come out exactly the same, in the same manner. They look the same.
True.
So the emotions are still the same.
True.
And so I think that the new devices and technology has changed, but the primary instinct is still the same. It remains that.
Yeah. So the babies, bring me to marriage.
Yeah.
So most of these youngsters I have been talking to, they say they don't believe in this institution called marriage now, and they feel love is more important. Why this marriage certificate? And we don't need any marriage. We can just stay together and be in love. That's all. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, that's when you said babies bring me to marriage. I was also say not necessarily anymore. That
babies
should not necessarily remind you of marriage anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you do see a lot of. I think live-in relationships have really become common.
Yeah.
While babies born out of wedlock is still not so common, but it is not something that it is completely. It's a very rare phenomena these days. These also happen, and I think I personally think it's okay, to each his or her own. That if they think relationships and being in a relationship is more important than being married, I don't want to challenge it too much, because finally marriage is that. It really is just a piece of paper. And if the commitment is there, and if they feel it should not, they don't have to solemnize it, it is fine. But I still feel this is more of a perception we have. Because I see marriages happening around me all the time.
Correct.
Left, right, center, I see every wedding season one is flooded with kind of invitations, and I know, a lot of youngsters I know, only they're taking the time. They're not marrying early, they're not marrying in a haste. And if they're unsure, they'd rather marry very late rather than, give in and have doubts about the person they want to spend their lives with.
Right.
So I feel that has changed. Maybe it's been a lot of delay in getting married, but I see a lot of people who live together for 4, 5, 6 years getting married, people who've been in a relationship for 10, 12 years, your high school, sweethearts, and you're getting married there. I don't think anyone has kind of thrown marriage out of the window. That percentage is still very small, but they're taking the time.
Right.
And which I think is perfectly fine. In fact, I think it's even better.
So do you feel like there is a choice, freedom to choose nowadays, right? More freedom. Like people have their own choice, and you can be with whatever you are. Nobody's going to label you or judge you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Lot more choice, lot more acceptance, and that can only be a good thing. It can't really be a bad thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Only thing is because like we said, there is so much exposure, so much, overload of information, and with lot of choices also comes a lot of confusion. So I think kids do need some kind of advice, some kind of hand-holding when it comes to making the most important decision of their lives.
Absolutely.
But that parents or elders should only get into it when they're asked for it, and not necessarily,
Right. Not
kind of not force their opinion and their decisions
Right.
on them, and they will eventually turn to them for advice. That's the only time it should really come.
Right.
But I think, the fact that they have a lot of choice, they have, and they know their parents are not going to, push them too much, I think it only frees up for them. In fact, maybe makes them feel more responsible.
Right.
That tomorrow they can't turn back and, blame their parents for anything going wrong with their relationship or their lives or their marriage. The fact that they've got this freedom, I think it makes them more conscious of taking a right, responsible decision. But almost everyone I know feels so much more comfortable that if their decision about marriage comes with the approval of their parents.
Of their parents. Right.
Yeah, they would want it, ideally.
Right.
If they don't have it, of course, people still tend to go ahead. And I think there I would blame the parents more than the children, because if they've made a decision and they find there is someone they want to spend their lives with, I think the parents have to just give the blessings and not create too many obstacles, which happens once in a while. It does happen. I think a very important change that has happened is that people recognizing that marriage is basically, between two people. And that is the most important thing, that those two people need to have love, understanding, compatibility. And everything else comes after that. While earlier it was all, no, you marry, two families are getting married.
Right.
And people saw a lot of other things. I think right now people recognize that the most important thing is that the two people involved should have that understanding, that chemistry, that love for each other. And everything else can be changed or adapted. People will adjust. While earlier it was the two people who were marrying each other had to adjust to so many other things.
So many other things, right.
But that recognition, I think, is very important and a very welcome change.
Okay, great.
And it's a fact, it's their lives. And I mean, they're the ones who have to be sure that they want to spend their lives together. And everyone else has, they must change around that.
Right.
And I think that is what is, it's a critical change, but one I agree with.
But then this also, I feel there has to be communication between like the different generations. There is lack of communication nowadays, and people don't talk to each other and sort out things. Do you feel that will make life much more easier to understand each other well? And people think, okay, the next generation will understand what I am going through. And we have our own problems, and you are too orthodox for my kind of living or whatever. So do you feel the better communication will help?
Of course, better communication helps everything, every relationship.
Right.
Yeah, that is very necessary. And I think for this, the effort must come from both the sides, the older and the younger. I mean, the older should not think that the younger, it's their responsibility to, come and talk to us. Or the other one, the younger should not feel that the older ones have to change. I think it has to be a two-way process. But again, I feel like things are changing. People are giving a lot of space to the youngsters, and at the same time being there for them. I do find still a lot of healthy relationship happening between both the generations.
So do you feel, Sunanda, a better communication between two generations will help to sort out problems?
Better communication always helps everywhere, be it relationships or generations or your office also for that matter, or your home. So yes, certainly this communication needs to be there. And I don't think the onus of keeping this rapport there, or maintaining this rapport, or even starting it, has to rest on the younger generation. I think it's kind of incumbent on both sides, the younger and the older, to start this process of reaching out to each other.
Right.
And I think that is changing. I have a lot of friends who are very open with their either the son-in-law, daughter-in-law, or the partners of their children, and in fact, they go the extra mile to make them feel comfortable. And I think that is how it should be. Because you are mature, you are the one who's gone through so much experiences, you're the one who understood life as we talked about it.
Right.
So I think this responsibility is more on the older generation than on the younger, to reach out and let the children feel more comfortable, rather than waiting for them to approach you and for them to, kind of pursue you or kind of agree to what you say. I don't think so. I think it should be very open. There should be no agreements and disagreements, no taboo on that. Everything should be talked about, and it should be settled very amicably.
Right.
And each one deserves to have their own opinion. And I do see a lot of that happening actually in a lot of families. It's not that the youngsters, they are allowed to feel that they are aliens or they're outsiders and they have to do all the adjustments. I think adjustments have to be made from both sides, and only then can you have a great relationships.
Right.
I mean, like a very small thing in that is I find a lot of my friends whose children got married, the person who's come into the family, they don't even address them very often as mummy or daddy or mama or papa. They are happy to say uncle, auntie because that's what they're used to, and the elders don't really mind it. In fact, I even know one they address them by their first names, and they are comfortable with that also.
Right.
So I think the world is changing, and we just need to change along with that.
Along with that.
Yeah. So I think gone are the days, when the older generation could afford to sit on a pedestal and expect the younger ones to come and pay them respect and, follow the instructions. I mean, those days are really gone. You need to come down from the pedestal and level up with the people in your family and, go down to their level. Otherwise, you're going to be left sitting there alone. And I think that is changing. People are getting aware that this is a very fast-moving world where no one has the time to kind of pander to people's egos and, old age beliefs. And this is a young generation. They are into new things. You just have to move with them. True. You have to move and you have to change with the changing times. Otherwise, you are just going to be left behind and you'll be left, with a lot of bitterness and the feeling that you're being left out and you are not being integrated in the family. So I really feel the onus to make sure this communication is there and is kept alive is as much on the older generation as on the younger one.
True. Very well said. So are you satisfied with your life?
Yeah, I guess by and large there are still lots of plans I have for the life.
Okay.
But yes, I am satisfied with with all the challenges one has gone through to where one has come till now. I mean, I'm happy. I took a career which was so comfortable for me, and I was I was able to work well. I wrote this book, and my family is there. And they were very supportive family. They supported me throughout. In journalism, you have all the kind of long hours, and people are calling you 12 o'clock in the night or 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's a 24/7 job. So I had a very supportive family, my husband, my son, and they've always encouraged me. So that part has been very nice. My son, I'm glad he's turned out to be an extremely good human being. And work-wise, I feel I still have a long way to go, and I hope I can continue to do that. So yes, by and large.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. I should touch wood somewhere. It's been fine.
Okay.
And yeah.
Great. And finally,
yeah.
What would be your closing lines?
Closing lines for
the life.
For the life.
If you have to write your closing lines, if I request you to say your closing lines, what would?
My closing line would be listen to your heart.
Right.
And make your decisions more with your heart than your head.
Okay.
Listen to your instinct. You know yourself what's best for you. Have confidence in your decisions. Go by your first instincts. Right. And something I tell a lot of people is, though I'm saying listen to your heart, it's very difficult to listen to your heart because, well, your heart doesn't talk. If you can't listen to your heart, listen to your body. Your body always tells you whether you made a right decision or a wrong decision. Oh. If you make a wrong decision, you will know you are uncomfortable. You will not have that feeling of being comfortable. You will know something is wrong. Some instinct will tell you there is something not quite right. Listen to that instinct. And if it's there, please reverse your decision. And only when you're comfortable and when you made the absolute right decision, you will find everything falls into place on its own. So my only thing is that you are the best person to decide for yourself and do that. Whatever you instinctively think is right for you is usually right for you.
So as Sunanda says, listen to your heart. And how do you listen to your heart? By being very aware of your body. Your body gives you signals for everything. So guys, that was Sunanda Mehta for us. Thank you, Sunanda, for being with us.
Thank you, Prashant. I hope I was able to answer your questions well.
It was wonderful, mate.
Thank you. Thanks so much.